here a minute ago and he disappeared, and it looks like he's coming back in. So there we go.
I got discombobulated. Are we live now?
We're live now.
Oh, well, then I can say my thing of live from Texas, where we can say we're we're at the top of the top 5 people who are states who contributed to the attempted overthrow of the government at the Capitol. And, I'm sure there are some folks who are proud of that. We had 85 Texans that have been charged so far for various crimes against the government. And that's really something to be proud of, but something we're going to talk about here on the Plutopia podcast. I'm Scoop Sweeney. He's John Lebkowski, and we're going to babble for an hour or more. We might just get carried away and just go on until next Thursday.
I don't know. I'm not sure I could do
Maybe
it.
not.
I might just go crazy if I did that.
I could go crazy, but it's a short trip for me.
So I have only questions. Did Donald Trump really incite an attack on January 6th? I mean, the House had a select committee and they investigated that. And I think they decided that, in fact, he did. What do you think, Scoop?
I have no doubts whatsoever. I watched all of that. And there's a certain, a large part of the Republican Party that said, no, they were just on a tour. They were just good Americans who were just cruising through the Capitol building. They had nothing, they had no ill intent. And
well, I'm not sure what their intent was if it wasn't ill.
Well,
but
here's some interesting news. Their favorite blonde, MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, had her planned January 6th Kumbaya event canceled. She had scheduled a event for the Republican Party of Osceola County in Kissimmee, and that's in is that Florida? Yeah, I believe so. Anyway, yeah, it's in Central Florida. And they were, the people found out that there were going to be a celebration of the January 6th folks, and they canceled it. So pro MTG didn't get to charge her $45 to $1,000 to meet her, and received a signed copy of her book, and to hang out and celebrate all those fine patriots who went on a peaceful tour of the Capitol. Do you believe any of what she says? I don't.
I'm a little skeptical.
A little?
Yeah. Well, I have something I want to talk about, but I'm looking up some more data about it, but I will have it in just a sec. And it is about the number of people in the United States who believe that the FBI. Okay, here we are. A quarter of Americans believe FBI instigated January 6th. And this is a poll that the Washington Post and another, I think it was the University of Maryland, did. So I have an issue with this, and I have an issue with pretty much all polls.
Yep.
Because this poll interviewed 0.0003% of the population.
Well,
a little over 1,000 people. It was a tiny, tiny number of people, right?
Yeah.
So the fantasy is that you can structure a poll so that you get a valid random sample and weight it properly and come up with something that you can generalize for the whole population of the United States by interviewing just 1,000 people. There is no fucking way that that poll can be accurate.
Yeah. Basically,
The
they're
poll
just,
also shows, in the breakdown of the poll numbers, it also shows that 13% of Democrats and 10% of Biden voters believe that the FBI instigated the January 6th attack. I don't believe that for a minute.
Mhm. One of my journalist friends in Europe pointed out to me in a message yesterday that she read those similar kind of poll results from the Guardian overseas, and they were saying kind of the same thing. A quarter of Americans believe that the FBI did the planning for the attack.
Did
And
the
no,
nasty,
it
yeah.
means that a quarter of the people that they polled said that, which means absolutely nothing to anyone other than the poll takers and people who like to write about polls.
Well, I'm sure there was a time when you could get a valid and maybe more accurate sample, but in this day and age, all bets are off. You
Yeah.
can't do it. And the thing that bothers me most about it is the increasing number of news reports that are just reporting on polls as though polls were some sort of reality, and they're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we used to get the Gallup poll quoted in news articles when I was doing radio news, and they were also treated like it was the word of God. You say, "Well, the Gallup polls, they're well respected, and they all wear suits and ties, so they must be believed." And it's like, no, they just talk to a bunch of people, and they're just trying to, expand that out to equate the results of this poll map directly to the population of the United States. It doesn't work that way.
It's voodoo. The
Mm.
assumption that you can generalize about all of America based on a supposedly random sampling of a relatively tiny number of people is hogwash.
Mm-hmm. Well, they used to do that kind of polling for television. What was it, the I'm trying to remember the name of the poll where they would give you a box to plug into your TV, and the Nielsen ratings, and they would count how many things you were watching, what you were watching, when you were watching, and they would use those results to turn over to the producers in Hollywood at the various television production companies and say, "Well, this is who these people are watching, so you need to do more of this." And it very often turned out to be total bullshit. They would say, "Here, do this game show," and they'd say, "Okay," and the game show would just die. So I think those Nielsen ratings were kind of sketchy to begin with, and they've gone on to be a lot more polling organizations who, they love to make these grand statements, but basically they're just trying to make some money off of doing their sketchy polls.
Yeah, we should talk about this idea that the FBI would uh, have a covert operation to launch an attack on the Capitol. Why would the FBI want to do that? What would they gain from doing that? What's the payoff to the FBI for launching an attack on the United States Capitol? Is it like you think they just want to screw with a bunch of Trump supporters?
Well, it's easy for just about anyone to believe that sort of thing simply because in days gone by, the FBI had a pretty sketchy reputation for strange and varying illegal things that they did in the name of law enforcement. I guess things like MK Ultra and those really strange things that were run by both the FBI, CIA, the intelligence community back in the 70s and 80s were pretty sketchy. So with that kind of a reputation, it's easy to say, well, they're still doing it.
I guess so, but look at this. Do you really think there's a bunch of FBI people organizing this thing?
No, that's if there is, they're just rogue agents that had no plan to do that. That was given, from the top of the FBI. There's always, rogue everything. There were a lot of law enforcement officers out there that ended up losing their jobs because they were spotted in the crowd. But you can't just you say, well, two FBI guys were supposedly seen there, so it's the whole FBI that's behind it. It's like, no, it's those two guys.
It is kind of a weird thing, though. So, what do you think Trump and the Proud Boys and their ilk, the people who sort of did make this thing happen, what did they expect they were going to gain from this? What did they really expect to see happen here?
Well, if you look at that subculture of the Proud Boys and all those groups, they are all folks who are really pissed off at the fact that they're being replaced by people with college educations and people that aren't, old fat white guys. And they're pissed off and they just want some power back, because there was a time where those folks actually had a say in how things were done in their part of the country. And in a lot of this country, that those times have gone. People have moved on from those kind of really strange, racist, militaristic approaches to running the country.
Well, I mean, I kind of get that, but what did they really think was going to happen here? Did they really think that they were going to? I mean, it looks like people came prepared to grab a bunch of legislators. There is some evidence that they were thinking they were going to hang Mike Pence. There's just some weird stuff here. On the other hand, what they were actually able to do wasn't very much. The only thing I can figure out is that they came all full of piss and vinegar thinking they were going to do stuff that they actually had no idea how to do once they got there. It's like the dog chasing the car. What's he going to do when he catches it? Right? So they made their way in. That they probably didn't even believe that they could get into the place.
Yeah, they were just hoping that the country would rise up in arms, that these brave warriors for patriotism and back them. And it's it's history trying to repeat itself. I mean, people in Germany in the 1930s did just exactly what those guys were trying to do, and their buddy Adolf Hitler was able to pull it off just because. It's a different time and a different place, and he had a lot of really powerful and wealthy people behind him, a lot of industries behind him that helped him take over the government. So these guys were all probably whacking off over Mein Kampf and thinking they were going to be the next, tough guys to take over the country, and it doesn't work that way, thankfully.
So there's a guy named Jeff Tiedrich who has he has a newsletter. It's a Substack newsletter. Let me look this up here. I want to give you accurate information about it. It is, what does it call it? He calls it, "Everyone is entitled to my own opinion."
Okay, I like that.
And he asked some very interesting questions in, I guess, his latest newsletter. He's hilarious, by the way. He's really funny, but he really gets into some crucial questions. And here he's saying, like, number one, who told the dipshits with the zip ties where everyone's secret offices were? Because apparently they knew. Mm-hmm. Who disconnected the panic buttons? Because apparently they had been disconnected. How did the insurrectionists know which Capitol building windows were vulnerable? And this is another interesting. Who disabled Mike Pence's access card? Apparently, Mike Pence was unable to get back into the building at some point because his access card wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's not surprising. There are a lot of insiders that have been kind of identified as being, heavily involved in some of this uh, inside information, inside uh, disabling of various protections. So it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, yeah. And why was Mo Brooks wearing body armor? Why did Jim Jordan and Louis Gohmert and Marjorie Three Toes, as he calls Marjorie Taylor Greene, and so many other GOP congresspeople beg Donald Trump for pardons? And who planted pipe bombs all over D.C. the night before? He seems to think maybe Marjorie Three Toes did it. That's a, I mean, that's a list of interesting questions.
Put together a bomb. She can barely apply makeup to it. God awful face of hers.
I mean, I think the assumption here is that people who are actually Congress people, whether they should be or not, were involved and had a role in helping this thing along. It wasn't the FBI; it was the right-wing Congress people, right?
Yeah,
and the people who had been at the Trump rally marched down there, and they were definitely trying to attack the Capitol with more or less vigor. I mean, it almost seemed like they stopped short of doing anything that you might have that they seemed to be trying to do. And they did things like they would sit around in offices, or apparently they defecated here and there within the Capitol and that sort of thing. It's just weird stuff.
Yeah, a lot of those people were just the sheep that were herded along by the wolves that were pushing them into the Capitol. There were certain people there, certain groups there that were very intent on taking that over in a very military, organized manner. If you look at the way the Proud Boys and the other, ultra right wing military and military, paramilitary kind of groups, those guys were deadly serious. I mean, they were wearing body armor. They had,
and they were marching along.
And then they had been trained, and they were
single
doing
file.
The way you do, in a military operation. The rest of those people were just along because their hero Donald had said, "Let's go take it over, and I'll make all of you rich because I'll be the new Führer," or whatever it is that they're wanting him to be.
But what exactly was it that kept the Proud Boys and their ilk from doing more? There was violence, and there was, militarization of some of the people, and some people evidently had guns, but I don't recall hearing that there had been any gunfire, that anybody actually shot at anybody.
Yeah, the only gunfire really was that one security person that shot that woman that was trying to break in, but that was about it. I think
Ashley
what really
Babbitt.
happened is reality started to set in when they got in, and they did not see the country rise up and support them and come to their aid. It turned out it was they had a riot going on, but it wasn't getting any support from anything other than a bunch of crazy people and some military-oriented, groups like the Proud Boys and all those guys. But it was just they started to see that they were going to be surrounded by National Guard and other police agencies, and it was going to get ugly. So I think reality probably set in, and they said, we're probably going to get killed if we don't back off and go away.
It took a long time for the National Guard troops to be deployed, though.
Yeah, that was kind of sketchy there. You would expect something like they're attacking the Capitol and our government. Why aren't these government troops just headed there, as quickly as possible?
It was shocking. It was really
Yeah.
shocking that, I mean, I kept expecting either National Guard or police to show up, and we weren't seeing much for the longest time.
Yeah,
And of
but
course, we were watching this whole thing on television.
you were talking about the members of Congress that were quite supportive of the whole effort. And in the
Yeah.
various hearings, you could identify who was complicit just by the nature of their questioning, the questions they were asking these people who were trying to, give evidence. And the ones that were giving evidence that was, against, the rioters were being questioned by these, Republican folks who just were asking very strange questions that I was just like, well, something's wrong with you. You shouldn't be talking about this. And, you saw, Jim Jordan, all those guys, their questioning was pretty suspicious.
I have a favorite shot here. Let me see if I can come up with it. Oh, let's see. Here we go. You'll remember this quite well. Here we are.
Oh, yes, I remember it well.
Yeah. I mean, it just kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? There's another shot of Josh Hawley who hauling ass to get out of the way because he's afraid that somebody's going to. Actually, I have that one too. Let's see. It's a little harder to see here, but there he is.
Oh, yeah.
On the run, trying to get out of there.
Yeah, be careful what you incite. You may have it used against you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I still am surprised at how little of our local crazies, are chiming in on this. Just Ted Cruz and Chip Roy and all those guys. Yeah, they seem to have quieted down, but a lot of the ultra right have still continued to insist on all these insane stories about how all the video they were provided shows that it was just a tourist group that was going through the Capitol. It's like, come on, people.
Yeah.
We all saw those.
They were going through the Capitol, all right.
Yeah, they were going through the Capitol like bad diarrhea is what it was.
Oh, my Lord. And who funded them? Where did they get their money?
Mm-hmm.
Trump's political network and some other Republican groups gave at least $12.6 million to the organizers of this thing.
Right.
So it was Trump and other Republicans and not the FBI. But it's kind of hard to track down the payments because some of it is dark money.
Yeah, and wonderful people from our area, like Alex Jones, he certainly contributed to the craziness, and he's been a little quiet lately, simply because he's bankrupt and headed into permanent insolvency because of his big mouth, but he still occasionally throws in some insanity and trying to defend all these idiots. There's an interesting.
Oh, go ahead.
An interesting article that I found in the Dallas Observer in the December 22nd edition had a great update on the Capitol breach, and identified. They have a list of the 85 Texans who have been charged, and it shows where they're from, and they're from all sorts of interesting places like Midland, Odessa, the Colony, Fort Worth, Dallas, a few Austin folks, but it's just all over, and it's all sorts of folks. And there's quite a few, on this list, they have an asterisk by their name, meaning they've pleaded guilty or been found guilty to at least one of the counts against them as of January 4th. So this is an insane bunch of folks here, and they're from
I found the list. Yeah.
Yeah. And I looked through it to see if I recognized any. I recognized the towns, but I didn't know any of the ne'er-do-wells who were on the list. But
Yeah, I don't know too many insurrectionists myself.
yeah, the Dallas Observer is quite good. They do some good investigative reporting.
I'm just looking at this list. It's rather long.
Yeah, 85 people.
And they're from all over the state.
Yeah. Yeah. The Texas Tribune, what was the reporter's name that did that? I've got too many screens open here. Okay. We're doing this by the seat of our pants here. The Texas Tribune wrote that with the help of a number of key Texans, it's like a who's who of Texas conspiracy theorists, conservative activists, and extremists, not to mention a bunch of nut jobs. But so it's an interesting list. If folks want to look it up, go to the DallasObserver.com.
Yeah.
And see if any of your friends and relatives and enemies are on this list. It's all over the state. I was amazed at how widespread it. Well, not that amazed, because we're in Texas. It's known for crazies, including us. We're crazies of a different
yeah, I was going to say.
I plead guilty to being crazy too. I was driven crazy, but it was a short drive.
So is political violence, is there anything we can do about it? I mean, it appears to me that that there's a growing threat of political violence. Not so much that it's been happening yet, but there's increasing calls for it. And I noticed that our favorite former guy has been doxing people right and left, making his enemies lists and getting the word out about them. And the implication is that he wants people to do something about it. Mm-hmm. If he's like providing the address
for a while.
Yeah. And sooner or later, it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's just frightening that I remember back in the 60s and 70s when there was, violence by people like the Weather Underground and the various leftists. The Republican Party was up in arms, law and order, and they wanted to do away. How dare you attack the U.S. government? All of a sudden, a lot of those same people that are, they were around then, and they're here still. And some of them are still in Congress, still in office around the country. And all of a sudden, they've changed their tune. Oh, they were good old boys. They were trying to be patriots. Like,
yeah, I mean, I keep thinking we were the ones who were supposed to smash the state. How dare you?
Yeah, stay in your lane, people.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting thing. A lot of us who were of a certain age, the boomer crowd, there were a lot of people who slid over to the left, and we were advocating the kind of the similar things to what the guys on the right are advocating right now. And the people on the right at the time were really trying to protect the institutions from the people who wanted to tear them down. And now it's the people on the left who are trying to protect the institutions from the people on the right who want to tear them down. And it's just kind of a weird thing to me that I can't really, I know there's a difference between, one and the other thing, but the similarities are kind of striking when you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember back in that day, back in the 60s and 70s, I was somewhere between, Che Guevara and Chairman Mao, according to my parents, but I wasn't quite that far over the leftist cliff, but I was teetering on the edge, and I had a lot of friends who were way over there, and they were good people. They just, they had political views that didn't fit with the current administration. At that time, it was Richard Nixon, and the behavior of the Nixon crowd or the misbehavior was enough to stir up anyone. And as a journalist at that time, I tended to side on the people who thought, Nixon was a criminal, and turned out that he was. One of my favorite recordings is him saying, "I'm not a crook." So a lot of that stuff is like a mirror image of what's going on in the Republican Party now, and it just blows my mind to think about. It's like some of these people that were damning the hippies and the leftists are now doing the same thing for the right wing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a very weird thing. I recall, I can't remember what year this was. It must have been 69. I'm sure you have probably heard references to the chuck wagon incident.
Oh, yeah.
At the University of Texas. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I was in government class, actually. A government class, the instructor was a guy named Ron Bry. And Ron, part of the way through his class, somebody came in and told him something, whispered something to him or whatever. And he said, well, I'm going to adjourn the class and I want you to follow me. I'm going to give you a view of government in action. And he walked us over to the chuck wagon where all hell was breaking loose. And there were troops in riot gear were lined up outside. And they were shooting. Ultimately, they started shooting tear gas into the chuck wagon. The chuck wagon, I'm sure a lot of people don't know what the hell I'm talking about. The chuck wagon was actually a place to hang out and eat in the Student Union building at the University of Texas. And what had happened was that there were a lot of street people who would show up and wander into the chuck wagon. And the word was that they were selling drugs to college students. So they wanted to prevent people who did not have student IDs from getting into the chuck wagon. And students didn't like that. Obviously, the street people didn't like that. And it was turning into a bit of a row that day. And the way that the authorities were resolving it were by bringing in like guys in riot gear and shooting tear gas into the place to clear it out, to get everybody out of there. It was completely crazy. But what I found was I went out and I observed these guys who were lined up outside with their riot gear on. And I can tell you, they looked very uncomfortable. They did not look like they wanted to be there. They didn't look like they were at all interested in doing what they were being asked to do, Gestapo kind of stuff. But the other thing was that some of the people that I knew that were sort of on the left, they're throwing rocks and bottles at these guys. And I'm thinking, That's stupid. That's ridiculous because I was of the, uh, um, what, like I had been exposed to the civil rights movement, and I knew that passive resistance was the way to go, and that violence doesn't get you anywhere. And and there were people who I knew to be kind of on the left, and they're being violent, and I wanted none of it. And I was very disillusioned at that point. This is actually where I decided I was going to be apolitical, um, which held, more or less for the rest of my life. I am kind of apolitical. I mean, I think politics is a cesspool. I think it's like it's it's terrible but necessary. Unfortunately, right now, I think the problem that we have in this country and probably in other parts of the world is that too many people are too plugged into politics and and becoming more and more extreme about it. And really, what government is for is just to kind of manage things, right? We just want things to be manageable. But government is also about power. And people who are totally focused on power, they don't want to do public service. They just want to take power and they just want to use that power. Um, they are a sickness within politics. And the problem with politics is people like that, really. And we have the best case in the USA and elsewhere when the people who want to be in government, who want to be elected to public office, want to do that because they want to be public servants and they want to serve their constituents and try to get things done, right? But if you have people who just want to do like ranting and raving on social media, owning the libs, or from the left, there's some of that too, like uh, hyperbolic statements about various politicians. If you just want it to be a fight, if you just want it to be a war, and if all you want if you win the war is the power, that's a sick thing, and that's what screws the world up, and that's kind of what we're seeing today. We've fallen into that kind of political division and strife and violence.
Yeah,
and I want no part of it.
I remember those violent episodes as well. I was in Houston about the time that you were going through all of those, and we had some great activists though who were trained more in the Martin Luther King approach of past
Right.
nonviolent resistance. Resistance is fine if it's nonviolent. And on the other hand, I knew a lot of the other guys, and I'm afraid a lot of them were just grandstanders. And you go to any culture, any subculture, and you'll have folks who want to be the center of attention. And if they see that the rock throwers and the bottle throwers are the center of attention, it's like, oh, I'm going to be one of those guys. They're cool. And so there's always that faction that will show up. But I was fortunate to witness a lot of the nonviolent passive resistance that went on in Houston and later in Berkeley and San Francisco. And the ones who really, caused good changes to happen were not the rock throwers. Some of them were, verbally throwing verbal rocks, but no, physical violence. A lot of situations, sometimes you have to, call an idiot to their face. You can use your verbiage, creatively without, going in, physically assaulting someone. So I saw a lot of good change by people who knew how to get the message out without violence. But there were a lot of other folks that I encountered. It's like they were grandstanders. They knew that they were going to get on the evening news, because they were out there, raising hell. And sometimes people do that because they've been attacked. And sometimes it's the fight or flight reaction of the human being. And some people will flee and some won't. They will fight. And that's, when you're attacked, sometimes you do have to resist.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I mean, we kind of have a mess right now, and we've had messes before, and we've got past those messes. Are we going to get past this one? How are we going to get past it?
One of my favorite, not so passive resistors, my friend Aaron Kay, the pie thrower from New York. I did a great. I got to meet him out in the Bay Area. He came out and hung out with our crowd, and I still follow him on Facebook. We've exchanged greetings, and he is an interesting guy. He was part of the original Yippie contingent that was formed in New York and other hot spots, and he was famous for showing up with famous or infamous politicians and public figures and throwing pies at them, get them in the face with a pie. And so I always had a special place in my heart for Aaron Kay, the pie thrower, because he just he had a way of making his point gently. I mean, a cream pie is not exactly a rock or a bottle, but it has a certain message. So I've always appreciated that sort of creative, maybe not non-violence, but creative, almost violence.
Yeah, it makes me think about Wonder Warthog.
Yes, indeed. Now, there's a hero that I used to tell my daughter, who was, she's born in Texas. I told her when we were living in California that Texas kids were visited on Christmas by Wonder Warthog, who came down the drain pipe and delivered presents to all the Texas kids. And my daughter was like, she knew I was full of it, but she tolerated my bullshit.
It seems like one of his arch enemies was a guy who attacked him with pies. Am I wrong about that?
I'm trying to remember.
I remember like, eat pie, pig.
Oh, okay. I remember that. I can't remember who it was. His alter ego was, Philip Desinex.
Yep.
A foot
Filbert Desinex.
Filbert, yeah.
What a man. Gilbert Shelton.
Yeah, Gilbert Shelton did some of the best, really cutting political commentary through his cartooning. I remember, I'm trying to remember, it was an offshoot of the Texas Ranger that they published back in the late 60s.
Oh, yeah, I remember the Texas Ranger well. It was the humor magazine at the University of Texas, for those who don't.
And we got copies of that up at North Texas, and we were envious because it was so fucking funny. and they spared no one. I mean, if you were a public figure, they figured a way to, poke really nasty fun at you, especially Shelton.
You remember Fulbert Sturgeon?
Fulbert Sturgeon.
Fulbert Sturgeon. I'm not sure who that was. That may have been Lewin Adkins, maybe, but he was. Oh, maybe it was somebody. Maybe it was Frank Stack. Anyway, he did the New Adventures of Jesus.
Oh, okay.
If you recall that.
Yeah.
Which was a pretty hilarious head comic. I wonder if. Keep talking while I look something up.
Well,
we definitely do this on the fly.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the underground comics. My good friend Paul Mavrides ended up doing a lot of the Furry Freak Brothers stuff for Gilbert when after Gilbert moved to France. And Paul and I have been friends for a long time. We were co-conspirators on a book about the Kennedy assassination, and he is still just a wealth of cutting humor, and he's given me some great uh, inside information on the current state of San Francisco, and he's not a big fan of the people running San Francisco at this time. And
Yeah, I was a fan of his work too.
yeah, Paul's comics were and still are, incredible, and he doesn't spare anyone's feelings. He comes right to the point.
I just confirmed that it was Frank Stack. Frank Stack was Fulbert Sturgeon.
Okay, great. Yeah, I remember when all that stuff came out. We used, I was a big fan of the Rag, and then I was a writer and contributor to Thorne Dryer's, you know, paper in Houston, Space City, and we always would reprint, anything, from Gilbert Shelton or Jim Franklin. The Franklin stuff was always a great cover piece. In fact, at KPFT, we had a number of Franklin artworks that we would put out on our monthly event calendar. So, those folks really were part of the underground, if you will, in Texas. My friend Bill Narum, another great artist and comic artist and serious artist. He did some great stuff. He ended up doing a lot of the album artwork for ZZ Top. He was part of their crowd for a long time. So, artists and musicians and just general crazy folks in Texas have, made for some good political commentary.
Yeah, absolutely. I incidentally, I had the pleasure of attending Jim Franklin's birthday party
Yeah, I
last
had
just a
Franklin
few
on
days
my
ago.
Facebook, and I was sad that I couldn't get away to go to that because, you know, he is a work of art just in his persona. He should be carrying a frame around with him.
Well, they issued a couple of proclamations that day. One was from the city of Austin, and one was from the state of Texas, and they both like recognized him uh, for what for the amazing person he is. And he talked about how he managed to get up into the very top part of the Capitol, um, the Texas Capitol building.
Mhm.
There's a place up there where people normally can't go, and he got up there one day. I can't remember exactly what the story was. I think maybe it was Ann Richards that got him up there. Anyway, and people had signed their names on the wall, and he signed his name there, and something that he seemed to be pretty proud of. He is definitely a dyed-in-the-wool Texan, and certainly people would not be as aware as they are of armadillos today if it wasn't for Jim Franklin and all the many illustrations of armadillos that he did over the years.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Trippy
His other artwork,
armadillos.
his non-armadillo related artwork, is quite impressive as well. I mean, he's a master of a lot of techniques, as far as an artist, in his paintings, drawings, illustrations, and just artistic projects that he's done over the many years. And just, boggles the mind when you look at some of the stuff he's done.
And also at that particular birthday party, there was, let's see if I can find it. Do you know who these people are?
Oh, Sean Sam.
Yeah, that's Sean Somm and John X. Reed there on the left and Speedy Sparks on the right. he, this was a performance at the birthday party. They were quite something.
Hmm. Yeah, you can see a little Franklin
There you
artwork
go.
over on the side of the stage there.
Yeah, that's the ear from Inner Sanctum. I have
Mhm.
a signed copy of that myself, and I'm sure many other people do as well.
Yeah, somewhere in my garage, I have a bunch of stuff just hung on the wall in frames, and one of them is the armadillo rainbow over a highway that Franklin did, and we had it as a KPFT poster, and just an incredible work of art there.
So I think we have got to a point about the left of our era versus the right of today, and that is that these right wing guys, they just do not have a sense of humor. They
Art's
just don't.
art. If you can't be artful in your dissent, then what's the point? I mean, I've seen so many amazing, uh, protests. One of my favorites, some friends of mine in Houston chained themselves to the federal building, and they did it in a very nonviolent. They were just laying there chained to the doors of the federal building before, and the everybody showed up. The FBI was there, the Texas Rangers, and they were just no one could find any uh, thing to cut the chains, and I recorded a lot of that, and it was as they finally dragged them away to jail. You heard the noontime test of the Houston air raid sirens. That was back in the days when they still did a noontime test once a week, and so you know the political artists knew that that was going to happen, so they timed it so that they were dragged off to jail as the air raid siren, you know, played over their anti-war demonstration. So,
Oh, that's too
you know,
cool.
it, you know, be artistic. I mean, don't just be going out and beating people on the head with a Trump flag. I mean, that's there's not a lot of art in there, especially God, all those Trump flags. They were just talk about visual pollution. That picture you showed was pretty visual, and not a lot of art involved in any of those things.
I have lost. Ah, there it is. I have found it. For a moment, I could not find our stream. We are
Mm.
still streaming to YouTube
Yes, well,
as we do so often, and occasionally I check the stream to see whether anybody has posted anything in the chat. And for those millions of people who are watching us right now, you should be aware that there's a chat box there on the right, and that you could
chat
possibly
to
say
us.
something to us.
We
Send us a message.
over the years that we've been doing this, we've received some interesting chats on there, the comments, and we love
Indeed.
to get that. Yeah, the real reality of social media, such as YouTube, is when you do a live broadcast, you may or may not get a bunch of people, but people really these days know that they can find your content whenever it's convenient to them, which is great because we post it on our YouTube channel so that if you didn't come in at 7 o'clock on Thursday and listen to our entire thing, you can come in at midnight on Saturday and watch the whole damn thing. And you can pause it while you go take a pee and come back and continue watching our insanity. And that's just the way social media is consumed these days. So if I look on our thing and see, oh, we only had 4 or 5 people watching live, it's like, it's okay. We'll have a whole bunch more that will pick it up. And because I always try and share a link to our live stuff so that people that I know will come by. And had my friend Marlene Edmonds, a journalist friend of mine from my days with Zodiac News Service. She posted a comment this week about, "Hey, I'm glad to see you," and that's the stuff I like to hear. It's like people
Yeah.
say, "Well, I actually listened to your ass, and you're crazy and you're full of shit," but we enjoy watching this anyway.
We don't have any of those annoying animations that point and tell you, click the subscribe button. But it would be
Surprise!
fine if you did. We certainly would like to get more subscribers.
It has been a long time since we came to someone's house and objected to them subscribing. It's like, how dare you subscribe?
No,
But
we actually love to get subscribers, and if we got 1,000 subscribers, which we don't quite have yet, then we would be able to run advertising and make some money.
now, if Ted Cruz or Elon Musk subscribed, I would expect that to come with some serious monetary
Oh my God.
content as well. But that's not going to be happening. Elon's too busy putting his money into the Boring Bodega, one of my favorite business names now in Bastrop, just south of where I am. Uh, he has his company, the Boring Company, which is he bores tunnels.
Right.
And he is boring to begin with. And he opened a bodega, which is a convenience store in the middle of nowhere in Bastrop County, where you can go in there and buy all sorts of tchotchkes and snack
Can you
food.
buy a tunnel from him? Does he sell holes?
If you go to the action, I don't think the bodega has the shelf space for a tunnel, but if you go to the business, to his boring company, they would probably take your money if you have a hole you need to have bored. And they're
Well,
thinking
that's
about boring
boring.
one for the Tesla plant. Boring. We are
So
boring.
here we go. They've got a Las Vegas Convention Center loop that they've done. They've
Here we
done
go.
a
Loop de
Resorts
loop.
World connector, Vegas loop,
The poop loop.
R&D tunnel in Hawthorne, California. So they've actually done a few of these things.
Yeah. Well,
I
they have
was wondering.
they have a big device that it's kind of like the stuff we used to see in the sci-fi movies, like what was it, Total
Yeah.
Recall, where
Yeah.
they were boring. I think that's what Total Recall ought to sue Musk. He's like he lifted their concept and didn't give them credit.
I wonder how well those things work. Is it efficient to do it that way?
Apparently so, because I was watching one of the early demos that they had posted, and it seemed like a fairly impressive piece of machinery that goes along and not only churns out the whatever you're boring through, dirt or rock or whatever, and also creates support, a support mechanism of some sort. I'm not sure how they do that. Probably some sort
I
of
dig it.
some sort of concrete or something. But
We're
it's boring.
we're getting close to the end here, and I don't think that we ever resolved those questions about January 6th. They were kind of eye-rolling questions anyway.
Well, it's kind of hard to resolve something that's still in flux. I mean, there are still folks that they're trying to bring to justice. There are apparently a number of people that have been lately identified by, talk about good citizenship. There are folks out there who are bounty hunters, basically. They're not getting any money that that I know of, but they're going through all of the hundreds of hours of video and social media and identifying these folks and turning them in. It's like, he was there and he hit a cop with a stick. It's like, okie dokie. That's patriotism there. It's like I identified the wrongdoers.
Meanwhile, Mad King Donald is in danger of being removed from the ballots.
Oh
He
no.
may not be allowed to serve again as president.
Well, that's going to end up in the courts for decades, probably.
And of course,
So,
they say, let the voters decide. And I think, well, why don't we run Arnold Schwarzenegger for president and let the voters decide whether he should be president or not?
yeah, there you go.
No, we can't do that because he's not eligible because he wasn't from the U.S. He's not a United States citizen,
It's
a
that
natural
pesky
citizen.
Constitution that the Republicans are always supposedly defending until
Or bending is more like it.
it gets in the way of one of their nefarious plans. And well, that damn Constitution. Well, remains to be seen. So keep on listening, folks. We'll tell you all about
Right
it.
on.
John, it was a pleasure and a
It
privilege.
was fun.
And I just
So
always enjoy babbling and drooling into the microphone and just having fun.
I will see you next time.
Yeah, I will take that as a promise or a threat. Good
Or
night.
both. Thank you